"You've always been there for me," my sister said. "But when I needed you, you turned me away." I couldn't forgive her, so I walked away, and she's still begging for a second chance. From a young age, my sister has only ever had one person to rely on me. We grew up in a broken home. One parent was gone by the time I was 5, and the other was trapped in an endless cycle of addiction. Because of everything going on, I had to grow up fast. I did my best to shield my sister from the worst of it. She still knew what was happening, of course, but I made sure she wasn't directly in harm's way. I started by stealing money from our mother just to keep us fed and pay the bills. By 13, I had a part-time job because we couldn't depend on her. As soon as I graduated, I picked up 2 jobs, and we moved out. I pushed my sister through high school, and believe me, she was a tough teenager for understandable reasons, while barely scraping together enough money to cover our living expenses month after month. At 19, she finally graduated a year late, and her attitude shifted for the better. She started working and eventually got her own place at 21. Finally, I had a chance to focus on myself. I earned a degree, landed a better job, but then the pandemic hit. As a new hire, I was among the first to be laid off. I'm saying all this not to get sympathy, but to explain why I reacted the way I did. When I was unemployed, about to lose my apartment, I turned to the one person I thought I could always count on: my sister. She was recently married and living with her husband. I asked if I could stay with them for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months at most, just until I got back on my feet. She said no. I was shocked, but the answer stayed no. A few weeks later, when I officially lost my apartment, I asked again. Still no. I ended up crashing with friends, barely avoiding sleeping on the streets. Eventually, I found a temp job, rented a room with some roommates, and after a while, found a new job in my field. I'm stable now. But I haven't spoken to my sister since. She's tried everything: calls, texts, banging on my door, crying voice messages, countless apologies, even showing up at my job and contacting my friends. Still, I've said nothing. It's been over a year. She recently had a child and is still trying to reconnect. She says it was her husband who refused to let me stay and that she had no choice. Even he has reached out to me, begging me to talk to her. But from my perspective, when I needed her most after everything I did for her, she turned her back on me. That moment was the final push I needed to close that chapter of my life. I feel guilty, but honestly, not enough to change my mind. Even my friends and girlfriend are telling me that while they understood my feelings at first, now they think I'm being unfair and should forgive her. What would you do in my situation? Update. I had a lot of people asking for an update and encouraging me to share if anything new happened. At first, I wasn't sure whether I would or even should, but eventually, I decided to go ahead and post. First off, I want to apologize to everyone who commented on my original post. When I first posted, it didn't seem to get much attention, so I stopped checking it after a day or so. When I looked again, I realized it had gotten a lot of comments. Unfortunately, when I tried to respond, I discovered that this subreddit locks comments after reaching a certain number or amount of karma. I hadn't known about that, admittedly strange, rule, so that's on me. I did read through most of the comments, though, and I want to thank everyone who offered advice, support, or even just kind words. Before getting into the main update, I want to address a few common questions and correct some misconceptions I saw in the comments. About the initial no, the first few times I asked for help, my sister didn't give me any real explanation. I only found out later that her reason was her husband's refusal. Pregnancy timeline: she wasn't pregnant when she told me no. Most of this happened over a year ago, well before any pregnancy would have even been possible. I had even mentioned the timeline in the original post. Personal hygiene and health: some people speculated that I was turned away because I might have been an anti-vaxxer or unclean. That's not true. I got my 2 vaccination shots as soon as I was eligible. As for hygiene, not that it's really anyone's business. I shower daily and keep my living space spotless. Family dynamic: a lot of the advice I received seemed to come from people imagining a typical, functional family structure. That wasn't my situation. What hurt most was that this wasn't just a casual refusal like, "I don't want my cousin staying here." I sacrificed my entire youth and a big part of my early adulthood for my sister, someone I didn't choose to bring into the world and wasn't responsible for. The first and only time I ever asked her for something, when I truly had no one else, she turned her back on me. This wasn't just a family disagreement. It felt like a deep betrayal. That also answers the people who said she didn't owe me anything because I chose to take on a parental role. It's not that simple. Now, with all that cleared up, I decided to take some of the advice a few people suggested. I told my girlfriend and the friends who either involved themselves or were pulled into this situation by my sister to back off or to lose my number. They don't truly understand my perspective, and likely never will. I'm learning to accept that. I have a habit of talking about my life as if it's the norm, but really, my experiences are unique to me. Thankfully, most people never have to go through what I did. Obviously, I had longer, in-person conversations with my girlfriend and some close friends, but it all basically came down to that. One friend kept pushing the issue, and I ended up cutting ties with him. My girlfriend apologized for how she handled things, and most of my friends either apologized or promised to respect my decision. I also ended up writing a long email to my sister. I'm not going to share the full message here. It includes a lot of personal history and painful details that might not even be allowed in a place like this, but the core of it was me explaining how deeply her refusal to help hurt me. I outlined everything I had done for her over the years, how much I sacrificed to protect and support her. At the end of the email, I made it clear, even if I fully believe her version of events, that her husband was the reason I couldn't stay. It doesn't change anything for me. It just means she didn't fight for me when I needed her most. I also told her that, right now, I have no interest in meeting her child or reconnecting with her. If that ever changes, I will be the one to reach out. I asked her to take this experience as a lesson, the same way it has been a painful but necessary lesson for me. In short, I've decided to move forward with my life, keeping the door just barely open. Since then, she sent many responses, but I haven't replied. She doesn't seem willing to accept my decision, but I'm standing by it. That's really all I have to share. Since the subreddit only allows one update, I guess this is where it ends. Again, thank you all for reading, for your advice, and for your thoughtful replies.